here. Some think he was born in a manger. The others think he was born in a log cabin. But in fact, he was born within the reach of millions of dollars. Fort Knox. He's a 30-year member of SCI. He was president and a founding member of 3 different chapters, the Buckeye, Central Ohio, and the Western Ohio Steinmakers. He's collected Steins since 1951 and written numerous articles for Prosit since 1997 and most recently in the current issue concerning the 11th Airborne Division. He completed 2 years of extensive cultural language study in Heidelberg. You might ask him about that. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome Mr. Lewis Foster.
Is this too loud? Okay, I'd like to thank you all for being here and thank Keith for inviting me. And just to clear up one little point of what he said, because everybody's going to do it to me. When I studied 2 years in Heidelberg, the first year was at a German school known as a nursery school. The next year I went to an American Army kindergarten. Most people go to Heidelberg to get their PhD, to finish up their education. And I thought, wait, that's kind of stupid. Why don't you do it backwards, get a good foundation? So I got a good foundation, and I wound up with a BA from The Ohio State University, known for coming in number 2 in major sports last year. We're not number 1, we're number 2. That's kind of my background. I don't want to waste your time. They told me I had to be done at 3:30, so we're going to do speed talking, so listen up quick. Now, we'll go through this as best we can. If you need to leave, I understand. The open hospitality room, which is where half the people have gone to, I think, or they've gone to nap time. So we'll get through this. What I've been doing, if you've noticed, is writing in prose about U.S. military Steins. And I wanted to go back to step number 1, which is what the handout covers, is what are you looking at when these Steins? I've always called them U.S. military Steins. Ron Fox calls them Cold War Steins. Does it make any difference? Not really. I don't think so. It doesn't bother me. I call them Cold War Steins sometimes. And the characteristics about them are on the handout. And I'm on page 2 already. I'm trying to get here quickly. I talk a little bit about the difference between U.S. military Steins and the Imperial German Steins, because certainly the German Steins were an inspiration. And after 1945, when there's no more war booty to be had in Germany legally, then they had to go to get these souvenirs. And that started right after that. The first slide is one that Bob Grosvenor brought the Stein to me, or actually it's a cup, in 2000 at the convention in Houston. It's dated 1945. Well, it could be that Dave Cantwell made it in 1999 and they put this together to trick me. There's no way of knowing. But what you can learn easily on the U.S. military Steins, if you look at that, it says 385th Infantry Regiment. Guess what? They were there in that town, Naumburg or something, in 1945. And that's their unit name, unit logo. It's all consistent that I would say, yeah, this is a period piece that was made when the guy was there. It was not a souvenir or reproduction kind of Stein. I've not seen any reproductions of these yet. And on the first page I talk about some of the differences between the Imperial German ones and the U.S. Cold War, the U.S. military Steins. I'm not 100% feeling that this is absolutely right, but it's a starting point. Tomorrow you're going to hear Ron speak. He could tell you, look from his perspective, well, this is true, but that's not really true. And that's what we're going to be doing, is just the research, and let's get it right. You know, the thing's been showing up on eBay, antique shows, malls, stuff for years. But as far as I know, nobody has really spent much time trying to learn about them and share it. Is Andre here someplace? He already left. He has supposedly around 500 of them, well over twice what I have. And that's great. We haven't done all the research. That's going to happen in the next 10 years, the next 20 years, it never end. So whether you call them U.S. military Steins or Cold War Steins, I don't care. If you go down the handout, I give you some stuff. When did the Cold War start? I limit it to happen in this 5-year period. When, I'm not too sure. If you go back to sometime around April and May of 1945, things were happening then. A guy named George Patton was a general. He wanted the German POWs, give them guns, face them east, and keep going to Moscow. Was that the beginning of the Cold War? Yeah, I'm not too sure. Maybe it wasn't until the Korean War broke out, Berlin airlift. You pick your own date, doesn't make much difference. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the thumb lists on Cold War Steins, and then the finials. So let's get on, if I can figure out how to move this forward. Very good. What I'm doing right now is the first few slides you're going to see are the ones made in the 1940s. This one I know was made in the 1940s because if you... I'll learn this eventually. Wrong one. Still the wrong one. Still the wrong one. When I bought, maybe I don't have a picture of it, when I bought one Stein out of the 1940s, yeah, they included the wooden barrel Stein, and it was something that some guy bought when he was there. We're having a lot of fun right now. Can you imagine how good this would be if I was running it? But the earliest ones, we know this one, and apparently I don't have the mate that came with it, but I bought it with another Stein from a unit that I know was stationed in Germany in 1948. So this Stein has to be contemporary. The same guy owned it. It was his daughter that was selling it. And that's the neat thing about these Cold War Steins. When you start looking at things on eBay, ask the seller some questions, they can tell you that was Dad's Stein, it was Grandpa's Stein, or I bought that at some flea market trying to get rich. Well, if it was Dad's Stein or Grandpa's Stein, they might tell you more about it. And that's something that I like this over the German ones because, one, you don't need to know a word of German. Number two, the veterans, the soldiers, male and female themselves, many of them are still alive. The records are there if they're dead. Their family is alive. A lot of times that's who's selling the Stein. And they can tell you more about it. Usually they're very happy and very proud to talk about Grandpa or Dad or whatever it was. This is just an ordinary mug. As you can see where it says First on the Rhine. Okay, the 440th Anti-Aircraft Artillery was an early unit that crossed the Rhine in 1945, March of 1945. That's easy to find and document, which is what I like about them. And you've got no question on the one, is it on your left? Yeah, the Berlin airlift. We know when that happened. 1948, it ran through, I think, 1949. And it shows you the picture there of all the planes. And they were flying round-stop into, into Tempelhof, landing like more than one a minute, 24 hours a day, rain, snow, what have you. Signs like this, that's not a 10th anniversary commemoration of the Berlin airlift. That was something the German manufacturer came up with to sell and put on the market in Frankfurt, where they flew out of, or two other cities they flew out of, trying to sell it to the guys when they got off the plane. Give them something to take home, send it to Mom, give it to your wife. You know, this is what I did. I fought in the Berlin airlift. These two are runs I really enjoy. Wrote the article in the U.S. Constabulary, which was started in 1946. It ended in 1948, or 1952. So we know that's an early Stein. The one next to it, nobody would know that except maybe Stan Jordan. The black triangular patch, that's the 38th Infantry Division. Its reserve unit was based in the state of Ohio. Look carefully at the circle, and you'll see that's an OHIO over the Stein all superposed together. Kind of their idea of being unique. Well, it is unique. You couldn't do that for Connecticut or California, maybe Utah, but that'd be about it. These two, I brought the pictures along. I've got one of the Steins over here. What's neat about them, they're dated 1950 and 1951. Easy to see that. These are before the regular porcelain ones came out. They're an interesting Stein. They're just a clay Stein. They got false bottoms on them. They were making lids. It's got a screw that takes to undo the screw, the helmet comes off. They were still in a primitive stage of producing these things. And that's what these represent. You can't see well on the one picture, but you'll see it on the Stein over there. That's a Sherman tank. For those of you that are into numbers, that one I happen to know is an M4. Trust me, I don't know the numbers. That was obsolete and out of the U.S. Army by 1950. Apparently whoever did this and painted it, and I think it's hand painted, that was their idea of what a tank looked like. So they put the thing on there. See how lucky I am? And that one also shows us this was a unit assigned to the U.S. Constabulary, which was the American Army civil police they were putting in place to get the German police reorganized and turn the local control for the civil laws back to the German government. Now we're going to get into the thumb lifts, and one thing I said in the handout you'll see is incorrect, and I'll try to correct it myself, and I can thank Andre for that. There's a couple different thumb lifts. They're not always consistent on the Steins, and I'll show you some now and some over there where the Peter makes no sense at all. And I'll tell you that on eBay, my strong competitors, until I did the article in Prosit, saying these are U.S. military Steins or Cold War Steins, looked at them, saw the old pewter reproduction kept on going. While I did a good job, I educated them, and it backfired on me. This is a U.S. Army type of thumb lift. If any of you were officers in the Army, that was the insignia you wore on your Class A hat. All right, there I'm getting an officer saying, yes, that's right. Me, I was just a private. Here's another one, again looking at the thumb lift. This is done as a button. Well, I think it's just a button. I don't think that was buttons on uniforms that soldiers wore. But you get into the U.S. Navy. Andre told me that Elizabeth, whatever her name is in Munich, told him they made these, but taken a copy or mold off of the uniform button for a sailor, and that's the new thumb lift. So they'll get more consistent with matching up correctly in a while. Mr. Smith can tell you that's the U.S. Air Force button off of his official bus driver uniform, or whatever you guys call yourselves. If you don't understand, I was born at Fort Knox. My father was a 30-year Army officer. I'm prejudiced. But the Air Force had their own buttons, their own thumb lifts, and you can't see the Stein. That's on an Air Force Stein. Again, we have another type of Army thumb lift, not as big or elaborate as the other ones, and some of the ones we'll see in a few minutes. Now, I guess because Benjamin Franklin won the battle, the American eagle rather than the turkey is our national emblem. And trust me, as a soldier or former soldier, I'm real glad we didn't have...
Excuse me. I'm trying to keep it from high pitch.
Hello, can you still hear me? Does anybody care? Anybody awake? But this is a standard American eagle that might be on as many as 25% of the Steins. And it's just holding the shield with the American stars and stripes pattern on it, and holding in its left talon a handful of arrows, the symbol of war. We're ready to go to fight if we have to. And this might be a little hard to see. Hello. I love you too. this is 3 variations of the eagle, so that it doesn't have to be the same eagle. Different manufacturers made these things at different times, and there's no right eagle here or no wrong eagle. That's found typically, I want to say, on U.S. military Steins, and probably on those only. The Germans wouldn't put that on a Stein to sell to the Germans. Unless, where's George Hibben? Maybe it's mountain climbing or hunting and it ties in. I'm not too sure. Has George done his round table yet? You can ask George about that tomorrow. There might be eagles showing up on other Steins, but typically this is one of 3 American eagles that I find on the Steins. Now here's where you get tricky. Look at the cannons. We had those kind of cannons in the United States Army. I'd have to ask an older person like Stan Jordan. They didn't use them in Korea or World War II. I don't know if that's a World War I cannon or if it's a Spanish-American War or Civil War. But what was happening on eBay, and I screwed up by putting it in Prosit, look at this cannon. People clicked on the next item because they were thinking that big repro, not a real Stein, keep on going. Wrong. I've got 2 or 3 of them over here with that thumb lift on them. The one on your left, take a look at the thumb lift. Look at that. It's a lion. And that one, I think that one has a crown on its head. And if you look at the military Steins, the Imperial German ones, that means it has to be from the state of Bavaria. That was their symbol. Well, when the Germans were making this stuff for goofy American privates, they didn't care. Just put it on there, it looks good. Reminds the guys of Germany, take that, pay our $7 to us for the Stein, and go back to America and leave us alone. So when you see those things, they're not always proof that it's reproductions. Am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? I'm trying to get out of here by 3:30. Oops, we got 5 more minutes, so listen up quick. Now we get into other things. A horse. Well, what's a horse doing on a Stein? The American Army used some horses in the Philippines, I think about 1944, but not since then. And that was simply to pull artillery pieces, I think. I don't know, I wasn't alive then. That's a finial off of a German cavalry Stein. That Stein, I think it's sitting over here. I had it in Prosit. It's an old German barracks that was built for the SS. I lived in that building for 2 years. When the Stein was made, they didn't yet have the finials for American Steins. So what did they do? Grab a mold, toss a horse on. The guy's from Kentucky, he'll like it. Boy, I got a cheap shot at it, didn't I? The one on the right, you wouldn't believe this. That belongs to a U.S. Army WAC major. She was stationed at SHAPE headquarters. The finial, look at it. That's a World War I German Navy flag. That's a soldier or a sailor, a German Navy sailor. That's what they had to put on there. That's what they did. It went through Kirchner's auction. I won't tell you what I bid, but my typical theory is to take the range, the low end and the high end, hope you can buy it for the low end, but add them together, and think, well, I can go $50 more than that. If you do that, you will get well over half the Steins you're going after. It'll leave you broke, but does that really matter to any of us? I hear laughter. It doesn't matter. We're all addicts. I want my cocaine and my Stein for $50, but I got to pay $500 for it because I'm jonesing for a Stein. I'll pay it, won't I? You saw that at Gary's auction. Now, this is something you need to talk with Smith about. All these airplanes, they're really interesting. I was a ground pounder. I was under the trees. Occasionally I heard some noise. That was all. I never saw these things. If we were at war and they were the enemy airplanes, I wouldn't see them either. They just come over, duke me, I'd have been dead, out of the situation. So these things are neat. I was really amazed that, is Norm here? Did he leave and fall asleep? Norm's coming to Ohio for an air show of some kind, I forget what it is.
Yeah, Columbus, Ohio, the gathering of Mustangs, the P-51s.
Yeah, the Mustangs. The guys that flew those things or just gassed them up or whatever they had to do in the Air Force, they still get together for reunions. Our good friend Bill Bosworth from Oregon didn't come here. He'll be there in September for the P-51 convention. The guy's not dumb. Steins are stupid. Go to the conventions. You have more fun there. So you get all kinds of airplanes in these things. I can't tell you whether this is an F-86 or an F-86 1A or an F-86 model 1A, B, 3, 4, 5, 6. Steve, when he's sober, can tell you.
Thank you for your continued support.
I don't know what they are, and quite frankly, I don't care. That's neat. I did the Air Force before the Army because I didn't want to short the Air Force. They are interesting Steins, and if you are into airplanes, or you're in the Air Force, there's a lot to learn and enjoy about these things. And guess what? It's all on the internet. You can look it up, the color pictures of these planes. You think it's this? Go look on the internet. Google, you can find it. And there, like I said, there's all kinds of them. I think that might be an F-86 on the right. Is that correct, Steve? Okay, thank you. I've been trying to tell Barney that I am learning something. He keeps telling me stuff and sends emails and emails and emails over one Stein. That's overkill, Barney, but I'm learning a little bit, so maybe he's doing a good job. More really exciting airplanes. Some of you guys would be interested in those. I wouldn't. But it gives you a chance to go what way you want to collect. When I started collecting, I said, hey, I'm interested in Army Steins only. And I promised I'm only going to buy Army Steins. I think I've got 35 of these Air Force Steins now. Why, I don't know, but they were there, and I had an extra $100 or $200 in my pocket, didn't have that Stein. Am I as stupid as you are? Yeah, I'll bid on that, and I bid on it. Now the Air Force ones, what I really like about them is the side scenes are so neat. Many of these are actually done by transfers, and not always, but often, especially the early ones, they're filled in or hand painted to fill them in. And I see Ron Heiligenstein, that's stuff that he won't get on the German ones. They didn't have jet planes in the Imperial German Army. If you see a German Stein, Imperial World War I Stein with a jet plane, it's a counterfeit. Something's wrong. Ask Ron about that tomorrow. He'll try to give you better tips than I can. I don't even know what these airplanes are. They're some kind of tactical bombers or something. Gee, they're kind of neat. Yeah, and guess what? If you were in a unit that worked those things, or those are obsolete by then, but those are the good days, it would mean something to you. I don't know who Major Tennessee, whatever his name is, but that was pretty important that he was from Tennessee. It's a nickname on his beer stein. I think I've got a Navy one here on the left and an Air Force one on the right, but I'm not too sure. Okay. Pardon?
Navy Neptune on the left and the F-100 on the right.
Okay, there you go. You got to remember, I was in infantry 111, run 1. I wasn't too bright. The Army knew what they were doing. Oops. I went too fast. Now some of these things are really great. I like the target gunnery one. But the one in the middle just blew my mind when I saw it. This guy's in the Air Force. Talk about a cushy job. He's a mail clerk. He's got a cartoon on his Stein. He's got a weasel or something, I don't know what the animal is, on a flying carpet type of envelope doing airmail delivery for the Air Force. Now, talk about a guy that's got a cushy job. He has all that. Plus, if you were in the Army, you know the Air Force guys had mattresses this thick on their bunks. They never went to the field. They always had hot food. They had air-conditioned barracks. And it's true. Isn't it? Absolutely. Thank you very much for the vote of confidence. But you get the cartoons on the things which initially, no, I want to be real about the Army. So I'm not going to like the cartoons. And I'll give Ron Fox credit for that. He looked at some of mine, liked them, offered to buy a few of them. And I'm a Stein collector. I've been for, got my first time in 1951. I joined SCI in 77. So Ron wants one, so what do you do? No. You don't sell it, do you? Or you tell him $500 for it. Ravi, you okay? Yep. Okay. Now this is not a cartoon, except this is a, what did it say, P-14 or something, I think was a squadron, the airplane we had a little while back. This is what is out there doing anti-submarine patrol. The bird's sitting there over a fishbowl trying to catch a submarine in the fishbowl. Well, it's kind of funny when you look at it and think about it. I didn't bring these Steins with me. They're kind of funny. The same guy owned both Steins. He did two different tours on his Air Force stuff or Navy stuff, one to Iceland, one to North Africa. So I think I've got the pictures of the Steins. Yeah, I've got the other side. Gee, what a genius I am. Here he is when he's gone to Iceland. I don't know if he's gone for a month or 6 months. It's probably a classified government secret even today. Then he went back to Fort Jackson, or Jacksonville, Florida, where he was stationed, and they caught another one the next year, and they sent him to the Mediterranean, and so he had a chance to see Arabs riding camels. Why he didn't have the nuclear bomb, I don't know. Was that too political? I apologize. In the cartoons, they're interesting. You look at them, this guy, whatever he does, he's all-encompassing like an octopus, or maybe it's a Stein that he's just trying to get your money out of your pocket any way he can. I'm not too sure, but it's an interesting cartoon. And they had some fun with some of these things. This guy, I happened to find him on the internet. He died of, I think, lung cancer maybe 3 years ago. He was called back to active duty according to his obituary in 1950 when the Korean War heated up. He was a World War II veteran, but he had some kind of a skill in the Air Force that was in high demand, in short supply. And hey, we'll send a guy from Germany over there to fight in Korea, but you're going to Germany to do the pretend war stuff. And his thing is so neat. So, oh, I forgot I'm in Kentucky again. It's a horse. It's not for sale. Is the Stein still over there? Watch it, okay? I've got 23, but I know how many I have. Again, this is kind of interesting. I don't know what this cat's supposed to do. These, apparently, I don't know, what do they call those things in the water where you go surfing? He's surfing in the sky or something. It's kind of neat. That was their attitude about what their mission and job was. This guy was up looking for Santa Claus at the North Pole. I've got to believe it. He believed in Santa Claus. The Stein's interesting. I've seen two others since then. One of them, the Stein is all completely in dark blue. Kind of unusual. I've got an artillery one like that, but this one is done up. The same exact scenes, but instead of being a white porcelain, it's all done up in the dark blue. And that one I just thought, well, it'll show you, you got to be real macho to be in the military. And this guy's really got some muscles on him. We're going to get around to the good ones in the Army before long. Now this is some sad sack in the Air Force. It's it's Air Force. Bit old hound dog. They think they're real tough and macho with all their dragons and stuff like that. Kind of funny how the guy's got the trots or something, huh? When you look up the unit, I showed you the airplane earlier, it's some kind of a long-range reconnaissance plane. This unit flew from Rhein-Main Air Force Base in Frankfurt along the East German border and landed in Turkey, turned around and came back the next day. They never ever crossed the border. Of course, the Soviets shot down one of those airplanes one time in about 1961. So I don't know how they got shot down by not crossing the border. There's a Cold War going on. These guys are doing some kind of recon, surveillance, I don't know what. I think if I knew, they'd probably have to kill me too. But that's why they're the turkey trotters, because every time it's time to fly, they trotted down to Turkey, spent the night, trotted back up to Germany. So some of the humor, there's another meaning to it. If you look up the unit, do your research, and that's something I enjoy about them. And this I tossed in just because it was a pretty picture of some kind of a big bird or eagle on a thing, and I don't know what it is. I probably never will. This is the one that Andres wanted the most from me. And it shows a bat with an iron cross on his neck and an iron cross in the background. But when you look up what happened, they're in a cave. That's why they got the bat. The cave was used by the Luftwaffe in World War II. They were using the radar to detect American and English bombers coming in to bomb Germany. And they would scramble all the airplanes and tell them, you're supposed to take off from this town and fly on this vector, but wait 20 minutes before you leave, you'll intercept them. And after the war, the Germans had to leave, we took over, and the guys that were there knew some of the history of the unit, and so they wanted their Steins made with a bat on it. That's why we got a bat there in the Iron Cross, because it was in an old German facility. Now, I heard this morning about this Stein. It's the 60th hospital out of Rhine, Maine. And I don't think the hospital is actually there all the time. I think they might have moved it around, but I haven't found that out for sure. This is probably the most intense comical Stein, cartoon Stein there is. And you can see all the neat stuff with the helicopters, and look at the size of the scale. They're not showing pictures of Europe. They're showing pictures of what their area of responsibility was. But the most important mission, I was told, and I don't know this from personal experience, is the flying syringe up there. And for those of you that were in the Air Force and were not good little boys, the syringe is flying penicillin. Look at Smith. He's admitting to it. He's cracking up. You still getting shots? I hope you're having fun. I sure am. But that's what this Stein's about, is just doing the cartoons. This one went through Kirshner's auction. Really surprised me at the Statue of Liberty. I thought some of the guys from New York would really go crazy for it. It's one of the few Steins that's got French writing on it instead of American, English, or German. And that's because this unit was stationed in, is it Lyon? No, Chaumont, France in 1956. which was about 10 or 11 years before de Gaulle withdrew from NATO and kicked all the U.S. forces out of France. We were okay before that to be their friends, but after that, they recovered, didn't need us. So they called the Statue of Liberty, which is a gift from France, the Statue of Liberty in French, because the Stein represented a unit that was based in France. Now, I'll get into a little bit of the finials on the U.S. military Steins. And this Stein, I think I've got over here, and it's showing the real good thumb lift and what's obviously an American soldier. So we've now got the right thumb lift, the right Stein, and the right scenes. It's not quite as important with U.S. military Steins as it is the Imperial German ones. You know, when you've got the wrong thumb lift, doesn't match everything else in the Stein, on an Imperial German one, I think it's a big red flag. With these, I disagree. They didn't have all the resources. They didn't have all the molds made. They went with what they had. And I took a couple more finials that I think I've talked about down here someplace in the handout of a couple, just privates out there being good soldiers. I do not think I know of a single Stein that shows an airman or a sailor in any kind of uniform doing this kind of duty. Either their jobs are too important, they didn't have the people to go out and just be stupid cannon fodder, or they didn't matter, we were the important ones. Do you have an opinion there, Mr. Smith? He's speechless. I told you about the different things they have on them. It's not important to me, but this is an M59 armored personnel carrier. It was replaced by the M113, which had a back door on it. That's the only difference I know of. And one was made in about 51, one in 59. And the thing was we were going to mechanize infantry and not be just plain ground pounders and be able to get them up to the front lines fast and quick. The American Army did that, and gee, I don't have any neat airplanes, but I drove one of those, I rode one of those, so that's the one I like. I get into some of the artillery ones. The one on the left I know is the American Army 105 millimeter howitzer. The one on the right, I'm not sure what that is. I might find it sooner or later on the internet. It's probably American. I just don't recognize it. Anybody knows anything wants to tell me, I'd appreciate it. If you don't, that's okay. Maybe it's German.
I think it's a 155.
Again, that's the U.S. one. Thank you. This is the most important finial. That's the deuce and a half. If we didn't have the deuce and a half, we wouldn't have won World War II. We had the Red Ball Express going from the beaches in Normandy almost all the way to the Rhine River before it was over with, before we could get port facilities to bring in more supplies and ammunition and stuff to the soldiers. If you follow these things, or maybe you know the Red Ball Express, that was something that they did to keep up with General Patton. Patton stopped at least once. There's no gasoline. There's no shells for the tanks. We can't go any further. We can't fight. We simply got to stop and hold. And it was a deuce and a half that took it. Yes, Mr. Smith.
For those people that weren't in the military such as yourself, would you like to explain what a deuce and a half is?
Oh,
I know what it is. Drop. In the air. I thought you were a bus driver.
that's what we called some of the girls that were overweight. Thank you. It's also a 2.5 ton truck. That was the standard one. We had smaller trucks, 3/4 ton trucks. We had bigger ones, 5 ton. But the deuce and a half, I think, was the backbone of what moved the Army in Europe into World War II and finished it. I don't think the Marines had that. They've had other ways to deal with stuff on the island hopping campaign. The Air Force at that time, World War II, was smart, was still part of the Army. Later on, they succeeded in turning to something else that we won't describe. I brought this along. I've got two of these. It's a bulldozer. I've got one in the Army, one in the Air Force. This happens to be one from the Army, I believe. But we had to move stuff. They had to build strips for airfields for the Air Force. Army had to do stuff in the field engineering operation to move dirt. And when they get dumb guys like me with an entrenching tool, it takes too long to make it smooth enough to land an airplane. So they brought in the bulldozers to relieve guys like me. We okay time-wise?
15.
I'm 15 over. Should I quit now?
No.
If you want to leave, it's okay. I'll wait for a few minutes till the room clears. Okay. When you get into studying some of these things, I can't tell you now the name of this one, but it's a self-propelled, I think it's an 8-inch howitzer. As I recall, there was only like 250 of these ever accepted by the Army, which may not be too important to anybody, but it's a little bit of trivia that if you're into these and collect them and have them, you can go on the internet, look it up, and find it out. Most of them went to Germany. They only had like a 2-year life before they were replaced by something else. That was your tax dollars, your grandfather's tax dollars hard at work. Part of the problem with this vehicle, look at the back. The crew had to be exposed. And even soldiers don't like to be out in the cold, bad weather. Now the Army did all kinds of funny things. They came up with missiles. And I don't have the good one, I missed that one. So they gave those to the artillery. So you've got the cross cannons from the artillery, but this shows the missile because it's a different kind of artillery. This Steins over here, it might be one of my favorites. The guy's in the Signal Corps, he's showing his flags, the semaphores, sending some kind of a message. I think it was probably more beer. Again, this is a different manufacturer, and it's just a helmet for an MP. And when you want to get into wasting money, that's Atomic Annie. It's a 280 millimeter howitzer that fired a nuclear shell. Well, the Army was fighting for the budget dollars. They wanted to have the bomb they could deploy tactically right there on the ground. The Air Force, they're doing the same thing with ones from the air. Because the more money we get for nuclear weapons, the more generals we can promote. And I think that's really how the Army works and the Air Force. This is an ordnance outfit, nothing too special, but it's an old thing using the bomb and fuse. One that confused me for a while is an anti-aircraft artillery gun, and it had the word Sky on it. Which I thought, man, is that the guy's name, Sky King or something? Well, eventually I found out, no, they called this gun the Sky Sweeper. That was his job. You fly an airplane in here, we're going to sweep the sky, we're going to shoot you down. So there's so much stuff you can learn about these when you start looking more into them and use the internet. The last couple are just some more personnel carriers and some of the stupid things. This is a great weapon they've got here that they used on a trophy for a boxing match. I'll do a future article about some of the sports that mostly the Army guys participated in, because I don't see them Air Force Steins. But, you know, there were sports that were legitimate sports, not the ones that Steve Smith did. Pardon? Okay. And we're coming down to the very end here. I think I've got 3 more slides. I appreciate your patience. the thing you think about mostly with the Army was the tanks. That's what we had to have. And the Army's real smart. They're going to fight the last day of the last war. They didn't have enough good attack tanks in World War II. So what do we do 10 years later? More tanks. Well, when things changed, the tanks became really obsolete. After the Gulf War, you don't see the tanks where we got troops deployed today. They're not worthwhile weapons now. And I was at Pat Museum yesterday as heresy. And a real quick side scene, they would put some of the lineage of the unit down occasionally, what this unit had done in previous wars. It's unusual, but they're common on these Steins. Maybe 10% of the ones I have something like that on there. Again, we'll go quickly. Marion took the pictures, and she has too much fun taking pictures. This isn't my idea. Again, the unit history. That Stein happens to be over there. But some of the neat things on these things, when you look at them closely, that's a great side scene that you don't see when you first see the Stein. This is one that confused me when I first saw it on eBay. You don't see any unit on there until you start looking carefully on the bumpers of the Jeep, on the front part of the treads are on the tank, and it tells you what unit it is. The unit was assigned to the U.S. Constabulary, and they put all the weapons in that they used. And that's one Henri wants to buy because it's got an American flag, so I'm giving that a lot of thought. This one I wrote up in prose. This is not a scene from what they were doing. This is from a mural they had painted showing them when they were crossing the Rhine, when the unit was assigned to constabulary duty in the wintertime in Germany. And you see the soldier there wearing his patch, and he was in the constabulary, which they called the Circle C Cowboys, or the Blitz Police. And then I tossed in a few of them. Again, I like the scenes on the side. And they get interesting, very detailed. And you can see the unit at work, or this is what their mission was. That's the one with the guy waving the flag saying, "Bring me more beer." And they're so good because they 54 on one side, 55 on the other side. Well, he could have bought it in 54, could have been made then. He might have known he was drafted, there's no war, I'm getting out and going home in 55. If he bought it in 55, he didn't wait too long before he got discharged, so I don't know when he bought it, but I can narrow it down to 2 years, and I think it'd be pretty right. And this was just going through the unit that was stationed in Austria after the Second World War. We had troops there doing occupation duty until 1955. In this unit, they had their cartoon stuff. They called themselves the Blue Devils. And it shows their travels in the years when they were in Italy, when they were in Germany, and finally went occupation duty in Austria. Okay, the same sort of stuff, the Steins over here if you'd like to see it. But a lot of times people don't look close enough to see what's right there in front of them. These are all done with transfers. Then they're filled in, so I can say they're hand painted, but they're not hand painted from nothing. There's something to work on an outline. I can't tell you, I think this is an M3 personnel carrier of some kind. It had some kind of a small gun on it, maybe a 105 millimeter howitzer. Not very practical, I wouldn't think, for using it for artillery, but they had it out there. This one, I thought it was getting done. It was an artillery unit, and it shows different things the soldiers were doing. Typically when they go to the field, some of the stuff their job would be, from sighting for the artillery to the communications. And the bivouac and whatever else they're doing out there being good little soldiers. Again, side scenes of two other artillery units. I think the one on the left might be, what was the 155? The 8-inch or the big long tom. That's what that looks like, but I haven't spent time to really look at that and see it. The one on the left again is probably that one you saw in the finial earlier that was just used for like 2 years. And when you go looking at the units, the U.S. Army had the 1st of the 16th Armored Division plus the 20th, a total of 17 armored divisions that fought in Europe in World War II. After that, near as I can tell, there's only 4 of them that ever did any kind of occupation duty or later assignment in Germany. And I happen to have all of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, that they never in that way kind of easy for guys like me to know what unit it was. In the infantry, the same thing. I missed the 1st infantry, but we got the 3rd, 8th, and 11th. This is the Stein that was just in the last Prosit. Smith says that's one I bought from him. He might be right. I've lost my mind. Oh, okay. Then that's one you just told me before, the journal on it. And then we get into my division, the 24th, the 28th, and the 43rd were reserve or National Guard units that were sent to Munich in the early 50s, 51 or 52, when the Korean War had broken out. And they were taking the regular Army units from Korea to South Korea, North Korea to fight in the Korean War and replaced them with reserve units. So what we're doing even now in Iraq, that's nothing new. We've been doing that for 50 years, calling up the National Guard, calling up the reserves, sending them in to supplement the Army. This is one of my newest Steins, in terms of one that was made dated 78 to 81. And that's where if you learn something about the military, you can find it. The thing on the top of the rifle with the wreath around it, that's a combat entryman's badge. He didn't earn it in 78 to 81. He had to have earned it during the Vietnam War. My guess is this guy, who was at this point a Sergeant First Class E7, when he was a young private, they sent him to Vietnam, but he'll wear that badge all of his life. When he dies, that very likely will be mentioned in his obituary. One below it is a paratrooper's wings. Well, when he was there in Germany, he wasn't in the airborne, I can guarantee. That was earlier. But he'll wear those wings on his chest very proudly the rest of his career. And that again is something that when he dies, that should be in his obituary. Next to the last slide, when you've gone through all the combat, this one might be a little bit hard to see. I think it's kind of rare. It belongs to the chaplain, the pastors. Father Mike, is it, or Father Michael? Okay, thank you. So they had soldiers who were rabbis, ministers, or priests, or they had rabbis, ministers, and priests who were soldiers. That's what you want to look at it. And the last slide, I believe, is one of the few people you'll see that's a real American. And not many of you left here, so it'd probably be hard to fool you. But if you think about American military figures, who would you think of? Who comes to mind first? George Washington, U.S. Grant, William Tecumseh Sherman, all kinds of guys. Eisenhower is very important. MacArthur was well known in the Pacific for his 50 years of service. But I'm going to suggest to you that the best known GI, the best known soldier in the U.S. Army is Elvis. I thank you very much. That wasn't necessary, but I thank you. If you want to look at any of the Steins, is what I got them here for. They're fun to look at. You ask questions, I'll try to answer them.
How about questions now for the benefit of everybody? How about questions now for the benefit of everybody?
No questions?
Yeah, go ahead, ask it.
Is the service that you buy into the commissary or were they sold in the shop all
Yes. The answer is yes. Most of them were sold off base. Some of them were sold to the post exchange, maybe the base exchange. Yeah, they had a book. You go through it and pick out, I want this, this, and that. I'll pay extra for this lid. Where I was in 65 to 68, either I was drunk or not paying attention, I never saw them offered for sale. I wish I'd have bought one. I think I would have bought one back in '66, but never saw one.
So what you were talking about, those books out, what's the guy's name that's IBM executive or something, that's written a book, and then Ronnie Fox was going to write a book, and got all the pictures and everything else. They actually converted one of the beer signing. You know what I'm talking about, what's for IBM?
No, they keep me in the dark. I'm still a private.
Yes, a preliminary book out. I can't think of what it's in.
No one tells me anything. I'm in the Army, I'm in the infantry. That's never changed. Marion tells me what to wear, when to get dressed, where to go.
Or the Fox, he's got like 400, 500 pictures that he's put set up and talk sometime. So you might want to talk like that.
Okay.
That's all. Question?
Thank you.
Question in the back.
Have you been able to determine who made these signs?
Able to see what?